Alright guys, so I just wanted to record a quick message. I noticed after I filmed the video for today that I never really explained where the car got its name. So we're calling the 92 Eagle Talon that we're building PACCwards. The reason we're calling it PACCwards is it's kind of backwards from everything we've ever done. We typically do rear-wheel drive, longitudinally mounted V8s, or you know, in the case of my Studebaker, 6 cylinders. So we're typically of that sort, but this is kind of backwards from everything we've ever done. So PAC comes from PAC Racing. It's the team, racing team that I've been a part of my entire life. It stands for Paula, Andrew, Cameron, and Calvin. I'm obviously Calvin, and my mom, Paula, she is a huge asset on the team. She's a lot of the logistics she takes care of, keeping track of receipts and that sort of thing. You know, making us meals and just generally being a kind and loving support. My dad, obviously, he helps a lot with the fabrication. You know, he does more of the suspension type setups and more of the mechanical type stuff. He really handles that. And then Cameron, that's my brother. He does more technical advice. He's more of a technical advisor. He doesn't really like to get his hands dirty too much, but he's definitely a big part of the team. And then there's me, Calvin. Obviously a lot of fabrication, wiring, the tuning of the cars, as far as the engine management. I generally tackle that, and then that's basically it. So that's where PAC Racing comes from. A lot of you probably already knew where that came from, just because you've been following us for years. But just wanted to give a little background on the name, just so it's like, you know, it doesn't come out of nowhere and it doesn't make sense. So, alright, let's get on to the video. Alright guys, I think it's time to start this build series. So, a lot of you will notice that there's a lot of stuff done to this car, and you may notice things that are not done in later videos that are done now. This was not built, not filmed in order, so you're just gonna have to deal with that. I hope that the technical information and how-to type stuff will justify the lack of chronological order. So I wanted to talk about what the goals of this project are. So a lot of you probably don't really get the front wheel drive thing. And in some ways I get it, you know. It's certainly not the optimized way of doing things, especially for drag racing, which this is what this car is being built for. But there's something neat about doing something that nobody else has ever done. So obviously we're not the first ones to do a front wheel drive LS. We're not the first ones to do a front wheel drive LS Turbo. And we're certainly not the first ones to do a front wheel drive drag car. Now, what we aim to do with this project, though, is basically to take the front-wheel drive LS world record, I guess you could call it, and reset it. So first goal, we'd like to potentially be the fastest front-wheel drive car or quickest front-wheel drive car in the world. Quickest front-wheel drive LS. I gotta be careful. I gotta be careful what I say. Gotta use the right, I mean, that's one thing that, you hear of people. It's you gotta put a lot of qualifiers on the, the quickest ... There's always a lot of qualifiers that come with that. It's something that makes me laugh sometimes. The more qualifiers you have, maybe the less impressive it is, I guess. But in this case, it's front-wheel drive, LS powered. So that's a pretty substantial thing. In the case of my Studebaker, stock bottom end, Vortec 4200. Fastest and quickest, stock bottom end, 4200. So, hey, I'm gonna claim it unless somebody else produces evidence. But I'm not that I'm arrogant about it or anything, but it's just something neat. It's a something to hang your hat on. So number one goal, we'd like to have the quickest and fastest front-wheel drive LS-powered vehicle. Goal number two, which kind of goes along with that, is, if you guys are not aware, another YouTuber, LS4 King, has issued a challenge. Basically, in the year of 2020, the person to go the quickest quarter-mile front-wheel drive LS4 powered in the year of 2020 will get a prize at the end of the year. We have until December 25th to get our times in. So we would like to win that. It's obviously, you can see it's a pretty serious car already. Has a 750 cert chrome ollie cage, which is going to need some work, which we'll deal in a later episode. I don't see the car immediately going 7s, but 850s is a real possibility, so we may start it for that to start off, and then work our way to a 750 certification. So we'd really like to take the win home, and I think we have a pretty good shot from what I've seen. The competitors, there seems to be, Brandon, obviously, he has a pretty good shot. Brandon of LS4 King, and his son probably has a good shot. The gentleman in, I believe it's Sweden or Norway, who's building the red Pontiac, his car looks pretty serious. And then there's another guy, I don't know what kind of car it is, but it's turbocharged, and it's a Honda, maybe. I mean, he didn't say on his post what it was. Somebody asked if it was an RSX. I don't know what it is. Maybe I can post a little photo of the car. So it looks like we have a decent shot. We're obviously, my dad is very experienced in tuning chassis. He hasn't done any front-wheel drive stuff yet, but it's kind of something that he's always wanted to try, and I always thought was cool. And we just kind of had a conversation one day, and he's like, we bought this car, and it was very cheap, and we're just kind of trying to figure out what we're doing with it. And, it really wasn't going to be great to be a rear-wheel drive car. The previous owner was building it to be a all-wheel drive car. So we got to talking, and he said, "What if we made a front-wheel drive?" And I'm like, "I thought you would kick me out of the shop for for even suggesting that I wanted to do a front-wheel drive build." And we quickly dug up an old magazine from CarCraft of Brandon Furchess and his Monte Carlo. And we are essentially duplicating a lot of what he has pioneered. So he's trying to build a business on this. So if you guys are inspired by this, please go to his business and buy his products. He's got a really nice oil pan. One of the challenges of this swap is there's no starter provision on the transmission. This is a 4T80E. You pretty much, this is your only option, unless you go manual transmission. But why would you do that? I might get some hate for that. So this is pretty much your only option if you're doing a drag race oriented build. And the 4T65E that came stock on these engines had a starter provision in this area, so I'm told. And 4T80E, no bueno. The North Star V8s, they mounted the starter down in here in the center of the engine. But on the LS4, pretty much your only option is to mount it to the oil pan. So Brandon has developed with Moroso an oil pan for the guys who don't want to cut apart old, crusty, oily oil pans that has all the baffles and stuff. So please go to his website, ls4king.com, buy his products. He's a really nice guy, so please do that. So goal number two, win the LS4 King front wheel drive challenge. Goal number 3, so we're in this car for very cheap, and I know a lot of you are probably doubters of the Grassroots Motorsports Challenge. So if you don't know what that is, the Grassroots Motorsports Challenge is an event that's held yearly. It is a drag race, autocross, and concours, so show and shine. And the caveat is you have to build the car for less than $2,000. I have no idea what that beeping was. So you have to build the car for less than $2,000. So a lot of you are probably like, how on earth do you do that? That's how do you, hot rodding and cheap, those two things don't go together for a lot of people. And I get it. My Fairmont, it got to the point where it was it just kept getting more and more expensive. So I get it. I get, if you don't have the skills or the tools, we have a lathe and a milling machine. If you don't have the tools to basically build what you would have to buy, I totally get it. It gets really expensive. But just because you don't have the tools doesn't mean other people don't have the tools or access to the tools. So my my polite message, I guess, to the haters is, you know, just because you can't do it doesn't mean others can't. So what we want to do is we want to take this car to the $2,000 Grassroots Motorsports Challenge, and we'd like to place highly in, we'll see about the autocross. There is actually a big advantage to running a front-wheel drive car at the challenge. It's much more well rounded if you can get it to work in the drag race. Your suspension setup between the autocross and the drag race are much more similar, in contrast to a rear-wheel drive car. You know, in a rear-wheel drive car, you want much softer spring rates, much different shock settings, but on a front-wheel drive car, you can pretty well set it up the same, you know, same shocks, same springs. You might run a stiffer a rear suspension, you know, lateral stiffness, i.e. sway bar, that you wouldn't need in a drag race, but, you know, that's not going to hurt you in the drag race. So there is a potential big advantage. You could actually make this thing turn and go fast in a straight line. And yeah, so it has a pretty major benefit there. Another benefit is a good portion of your cost in a rear-wheel drive vehicle is the differential and transmission and axles, and we picked up that whole mess. So transmission, differential obviously is integrated in the transmission, $135. So that's normally a, you know, $300 to $400 portion of your budget on a rear-wheel drive car, at least for us. Some of you are like, what? How is it that cheap? But yes, for us, that is normally, you know, $300 to $400 worth of your budget that we have $135 in. So that allows you to spring for bigger turbos and, you know, fancier suspension parts and all the stuff that you normally have to skimp on in a rear-wheel drive build. So we'd like to, number 3, we'd like to go to the Grassroots Motorsports Challenge and do well. So this thing should kill it in the concourse. I mean, if you don't think this is cool, or, you know, they grade on execution and innovation and presentation. I can handle the presentation. We normally do well in that portion. Execution, I don't think I need to say anymore. And innovation, dude, seriously, look, like, open your eyes. So that's the goals. That's I think it's important to have goals. I guess I can talk about horsepower. We'd like it to, it's a Borg Warner S475 right off a tractor trailer. We'd like to make around 750 horsepower to the wheels. So there's another goal that tells you what kind of fuel system you need. At some point we want to upgrade that to an S480, likely after the challenge. And then we'll shoot for more horsepower. So that's our goals. I think Matt at Sloppy Mechanics, that's something that he always harps on people, like, figure out what you want to do. Like, if you're going to come to me asking for help, dude, like, if you don't know what you want to do, it's hard for me to suggest, you know, you will require this, or you will not require this, or you would be better off with this if you want, you know, a particular type of spool, you know. I digress, as Matt always says. Um, he's the best. So I think that's about where we're going to cut this guy off for the first episode. I think it's good to have goals, and without, I think the next episode is going to be some fabrication. I believe we're working on this, which is already done, welding all the holes in the firewall shut, and then you'll notice that the frame fitment is pretty tight. We did have to notch it, so we had to fill that all in. So I'm not going to spoil too much for that. So look forward to the next one. I really like the way this car is coming out, and I know a lot of you were getting a little antsy. You wanted to see the car, see what we were doing. I really appreciate that. That's always encouraging. So, all right, let's cut this one off. Catch you guys.